Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us once again. I hope all of you are doing just fantastic as we have a great show planned for you today with none other than, one of our more recent Computer America correspondents, Mr. Scott Schober. And, he joins us once a month, usually towards the end, but the holidays being what they are, we are not going to have a final week in December. Instead, he's joining us this week, and we are happy to do so as we have a lot to talk about when it comes to, the financial roller coaster that is Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. When we talk about, 2017, the year of hacks, and what to look forward to, or at least what to look out for in 2018. Lots to talk about, so we're going to get started here in just a moment. But before we do, once again, I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and a few things to mention, including ComputerAmerica.com. That's where you'll find everything and anything having to do with today's show, be it a link to our guest website, a link to our guest book, a link to any articles that we do, videos that we discuss, anything like that can be found right there at our homepage. Also, while you're there, be sure to check out the contest, which every single Friday we give away a prize from Logitech. Happy to do that with them. And the live video feed where you can watch Computer America as well as listen. Just another way to experience what it is that we do here on Computer America. So, with all that being said, I think we're just going to go ahead and jump right into this because, a lot to talk about, but, we'll keep it going, but no pressure, no rush. And yeah, once again, joining us, he is a Computer America correspondent, longtime, cybersecurity expert in the industry, runs his own company that makes, security, safety products, and, just an all-around very interesting guy. So, Scott, welcome back onto Computer America. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Ben. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. So, again, this is a little bit outside your normal time zone, but, hey, Computer America's not going to be on for the next week, so happy to have you on now. But, even though you were just on just a couple weeks ago, you have a serious number of topics here. So I thought a good place to start would be one that, we talk about often on the show, but we never talk with someone else about it. We do try to follow the news as best we can about Bitcoin, but I think, more and more we're getting questions here from our listeners about, what exactly is Bitcoin? Is it something that I need to put money into? How much money should we put into? Of course, we try to avoid all scenarios of you should invest XYZ because, Bitcoin, I think like most investments or a lot of investments, it's not a sure thing and it's very volatile. And, we would never advocate someone invest in something like this, but there have been people who have been made literally billionaires off of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin specifically. So, Scott, I'll let you, kind of give a background of Bitcoin and talk about what's been happening with the cryptocurrency because it went from a thing that techies like to now, financial advisors are thinking about getting into.
Yeah, and Bitcoin is a hot topic. We hear about it in the headlines each and every day, and I think a large part of it is probably people look at it and say, hey, this is a great way to make a lot of money real quick because they read all those headlines where it keeps soaring and people become millionaires overnight. And even just this past weekend, it actually peaked above 20,000, which was kind of where I saw it on the horizon, heading toward, and then it's backed off to, low 17,000 to 18,000. It's been trading today. So it is still extremely volatile as far as a cryptocurrency. And unfortunately, it does have a stigma where it's associated to a lot of negative things for hackers, for criminals, money laundering, all of the negative things because it is digital anonymous currency, as we talked about in the last segment, and it's certainly the choice by hackers to use Bitcoin. But there are a lot of other cryptocurrencies like Litecoin and others that also are popping up and starting to gain some acceptance. So I think that the world is certainly changing there, but I think the roller coaster ride of going up and down is what is so concerning, got so much attention to people. I do want to also point out, at least in the financial world, it's now starting to be viewed upon as the most crowded trade, is what it's kind of been termed this past week, because so many people are buying it speculative. But it's important, I think, for listeners to note when they're trying to acquire bitcoins or get them in their digital wallets and such, there are fees associated to it. Nobody typically talks that much about the fees. But for instance, one person recently picked up $25 worth, $25 worth of bitcoins, which is a very small percentage of bitcoins because the price is so crazy. There was a $16 fee associated with that. That's pretty expensive. So people need to keep in mind, if they want to just buy bitcoins and hold them and trade them, this and that, as almost as a stock, it can be expensive from the fee standpoint. So they really want to do their homework and research first. And again, as you mentioned, we don't want to condone it or recommend this or that as far as investing in things like that. But it's important to realize there are fees that are associated to it, and there's extreme volatility that one must be willing to go for the ride if they're going to buy into that cryptocurrency.
Right. Yeah, and that was a kind of a joke that I heard a couple of weeks ago about Bitcoin, because folks, if you're watching the video portion, we have just in the past year it's up 2,000%, and if you look at all time, there was a time when you could buy Bitcoin, multiple Bitcoin for less than $1. It was there way back in 2013, and I think that's when people kind of look at its astronomical rise and they go, man, if only I had invested back in 2013, think about how rich I'd be. And I heard a joke that someone's like, yeah, I wish I had invested in that cryptocurrency that was used primarily for buying illegal weapons, buying illegal drugs, and trading to hackers. Like Bitcoin has come a long way. It's now being used in a lot of institutions, but you got to remember that at its roots, you touched on it lately, because of the nature of the tool and Bitcoin. That's why I think a lot of tech people like it. It is a tool. It's a tool that can do certain things very, very well, and it's not just like gold, where gold is just intrinsically valuable. Instead, it's hey, Bitcoin can be used in any number of ways. But that was kind of my point, was that, there probably wasn't a very good time other than the past 6 months that people were truly investing in Bitcoin just to invest in Bitcoin. This is kind of a recent phenomena. So you have here, though, that, 20,000, now it's back down to 17,000. That seems to be the past week. And when I say week, it's because if you go back even a month, it was hovering around 8,000. It was crazy. You have here a correction. What kind of correction do you see? Because we've seen corrections from Bitcoin. I think it was like 2015 or something like that. It went from $2,000 and people thought that was insane, fell back down to like $300 and people thought Bitcoin was dead. What kind of correction do you see in the future for this?
Well, there, and again, not trying to predict the future because I can't, but I think we're already starting to see a little bit of a correction. That mythical mark in the sand was 20,000. A lot of people look towards saying, hey, it's going to hit 20,000, and myself included, seeing with all these speculative buyers. And now that I think it's breached that, it's already backed off $2,000-$3,000 per Bitcoin. That's significant in itself. Is there more room where it could drop down further to 15,000? Absolutely. Even further, is it possible? Who knows where the bottom is, and who knows where the top is? And that's the whole concern, I think, with Bitcoin. We're not looking at this as traditional currency where, well, it's not the same now, but it used to be backed by gold or other assets or things like that. There's really nothing that you can easily associate to the value other than the supply chain and how coins are actually mined and what the demand is. And I think the scary part is when you're getting investors now, and you're hearing people of all sorts. I talk to people all the time. In fact, I was talking to the receptionist here at our company. She said, I heard about this thing, Bitcoin, and my son's going to take his life savings and going to go buy some.
Oh, no, 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 no.
And I said, oh, wait, no, don't. And she's like, well, I wanted to get your thought. What do you think about it? And I'm saying, well, I liken it to a stock. It may be back in the days of AOL or Cisco in the heydays in the late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah, people that put down some cash in this one particular company, did it skyrocket, and would they be millionaires today if they bought enough? Absolutely. 2009, Bitcoin, you could buy one Bitcoin for about 5 cents.
Yeah.
Where is it today? But for every millionaire there are probably millions of penniless people that have also lost their money. And there's been a lot of scams associated to apps and digital wallets, and I think it's important, you and myself, that we help people appreciate, be cautious, be careful, don't be too quick, because since there's nothing behind it, what happens if the currency's banned in a particular country tomorrow? What's the effect? What happens when huge sums of Bitcoins are compromised and stolen? Can you get your money back? Does it have insurance on it? No. So consumers need to be very, very cautious there, and they don't want to have too much out there in their digital wallets or on someone else's site where it's actually being hosted or supported that they could be compromised. You want to be very careful, just like a wallet. You don't walk around with $100,000 cash in your wallet. That would be foolish. Why? What if you lose your wallet?
Yeah.
What if you're robbed? Same thing with Bitcoin. The same premise holds true, but it's a digital currency, and there's nothing behind it on top of it. So, word to the wise.
Yeah, no, and I'm very happy that you kind of put a little bit of a damper, because whenever someone says that they're going to put their life savings, there is an online community talking about cryptocurrency, and there's a reason that all over their forums they have plastered don't trade anything you're not willing to burn, don't that you're not willing to lose, because there has been a time when, like I said, people bought in when it was 2000 and they expected it to go up, and it fell back down to like $150, $200 the next day, and people did drastic things. It was not good, and things can happen just like that yet again. Though I will say that Bitcoin, and I haven't had anyone talk about this about Bitcoin, but you said that your receptionist, her son, you said that everyday people are starting to talk about Bitcoin. One thing that I heard mention trading, and this was when it first hit 19,000. I think it was about 19,000. There was someone, because the nature, I'm sorry about being all over the place, but the nature of Bitcoin, folks, if you don't know, is that there are wallets, and essentially everyone can see inside the wallets. If you have the public key, you can access it, and you can see what they traded, when they traded, blah, blah, blah. It's this whole blockchain idea, and you can verify all these transactions. Well, during one day of trading, a single wallet had traded $250 million worth of Bitcoin. They purchased $250 million, and then they sold at the end of the day when it went up $3,000. So, they made themselves, over the course of a single trading day, they made themselves, tens of millions of dollars with one transaction. But that's not, but that just shows that they themselves didn't really believe in the value of Bitcoin, because they bought it at the beginning, knew it was volatile, knew it would go up, sold it at the end of the day for a profit, and wiped their hands clean of it. It shows just how much one single actor can influence this. And more to that point, I'm sure that if we start talking about cybersecurity things, Scott, did you hear about the I think it was Ethereum? There was a service that was hacked, and they had like 67 million Bitcoin or something like that, or Ethereum coin stolen from them, and they had to tell all of their users that, hey, our wallets were compromised, and we can't pay any of you. I mean, how common looking forward, because again, now everyday people are getting into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. 2017 was probably the year of ransomware. Do you think 2018 is going to be the year of cryptocurrency and, really finding all of those security flaws?
Yeah, and that's a great point, what you're touching on. many times people will focus on the positive, the appreciation, and they'll brag and tell the world when they made a lot of money making a financial decision. I bought Bitcoin at this price, it went up to here. I bought this stock and appreciate here. Not many people focus on the disaster stories. We don't hear about them as much because people don't like to talk about their stupid decisions. There's been a lot of stupid decisions, I think, with regards to Bitcoin and compromises and hacks. Probably the biggest, although it goes back some time and not a whole lot of people talk about it, was the compromise Mt. Gox. And again,
Yeah.
that goes back in, what was that, April 2014, I believe,
14.
2015.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there, what happened? I mean, there was 850,000 bitcoins that represented at that time. They were handling about 70% of all the transactions for Bitcoin worldwide. So that was the single most largest intermediary for Bitcoin exchange, and they disappeared. $450 million at one moment. So imagine that intermediary is handling your Bitcoin, and what do? It's gone, just like that. Imagine the money you've saved your whole life in your 401k or in your bank account, and you get a call by your financial institution, and they say, "Oh, sorry, we lost your money." That's really what it's equivalent to. Now, most of the missing Bitcoins really were just stolen out of the wallet. Over time, they were being siphoned out over a couple of years prior to that, and they didn't realize it. So these type of things can happen in the world of ones and zeros in the digital world that we live in. And if we don't have ability to touch and feel or control it, there's going to be some concern there. And you mentioned another point there with Ethereum, some things compromised. NiceHash recently had cryptocurrency mysteriously disappeared. It was talked about last week there. And what really that company did was they were set up specifically to sell users computer power to help mine Bitcoins. And we discussed this, I think, the other week, the importance of having these intermediaries to help, because everybody doesn't have enough computing power. So there's companies set up such as NiceHash and so on and so forth, and there's many others out there too that will help buy and trade, in a sense, lease computing power to help really solve these algorithms to get rewarded Bitcoins. Well, a lot of customers suddenly got really bad news, and I was checking a forum the other day, and they were really upset, saying, "Hey, we think NiceHash made up this story and walked away with all the Bitcoins, and they're just doing this or doing that." And so there's a lot of, again, speculation. Where did it go? What happened? And they just said, well, it's being investigated. Right now, they're gone.
That is completely possible because, again, due to the nature, they could see which wallet the coins were sent to, but then they could turn around and say, that wallet gets sent to another, and kind of like shell corporations and blah blah blah. You can mask pretty darn well about who eventually ends up with these coins. It's there's not really a fingerprint that you can really stick to them. And I think, honestly, Scott, we should probably go into some of the other, I feel like people who are listening to this and they're thinking, should I get into Bitcoin? I think we should talk about some of the inherent problems with Bitcoin that other cryptocurrencies are trying to solve. And you touch on one way at the beginning, which involves fees. And here's one problem that I've heard about Bitcoin. You can expand on it. Was that Bitcoin currently, it's bloated. People are really trading it like crazy. It's something that's very, very popular. You mentioned that these transactions, they have to be processed by by someone, and they charge anywhere. I've heard up to $20. You said 16. I've heard 20, and I hear it can take a couple of hours. You have to remember that that Bitcoin at its heart was supposed to be a currency. It was supposed to be something like handing cash over a counter. I don't think you want to spend $20 to buy a $1 soda and wait 8 hours to get the transaction to go through. Do you think that that's an inherent problem that Bitcoin, do you think they're going to have to face that? Or do you think that to be an actual currency, you're going to have to go to one of these alternative coins?
Oh, I think you hit the nail on the head there. And not enough people are talking about that. The sheer time it takes, when it takes, and there are reported cases of up to 8 hours to complete a transaction. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
People are not going to use it as a means. I think that's going back to the Stone Ages or something, paying by rocks or something, and I could go mine a rock or something like that. I don't know what other analogy to think of, but it doesn't make any sense. It's not practical. The whole purpose of using digital currency and why people are so attracted to it is because of convenience, and they theoretically believe it's secure. And in essence, yes, Bitcoin is secure. Cryptocurrency is secure. Is it hackable? Absolutely, and everything is hackable to some degree. But people need to realize it's when it's handed off in the exchanges and third parties and digital wallets. All the other pieces in the puzzle need to be secure as well, because it's that weakest link. That's where the vulnerabilities are. I continually encourage people, look at other types of secure payment methods. If you have a mobile phone, if you're using iPhone, you can use Apple Pay. If you're using Android, Google, you got Google Wallet. Again, both secure, proven digital wallets that are integrated into your device already using near-field communication. It's secure, it works, very difficult to hack. They're not slamming you with these huge, $16, $20 fees as Bitcoin, and literally it takes a second. If you've ever tried it, go to your local store that does accept payment there, and you'll probably find it is convenient and secure. It's a nice compromise, and it's or a nice balance, and it's already integrated into our mobile devices. It's there. It's proven technology. Bitcoin is speculative. It's hard to understand the entire ecosystem, and that's where I think the vulnerabilities lie. They lie within the ecosystem, and there's a lot of hackers out there that are becoming part of that ecosystem that are disguised to look legitimate, and we don't know if they are legitimate or not.
There was, and just to prove your point even further, and this really does become a problem. When it's tech people who who really do a lot of research and really understand the technology to its core. That's one thing. There was a fake, I want to say it was a fake Litecoin. It's another alternate coin. There's a fake Litecoin wallet, I believe, that shot up to like the number 3 app on iOS before it was taken down. And that was not approved by anyone. No one knows who the developer was. And if you happen to download that onto your iPhone and transfer your coin over before they took it down, you right there, you could have just gotten had, thinking that iOS was protecting you when really it was fake.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful point to bring out to listeners, because the same analogy, would you take your wallet and walk across the street to a neighbor that just moved in and said, "Hey, could you hold my wallet? I'm going on vacation. I'll be back in a month." No, it makes no sense. It's kind of the same thing. You're downloading it off an app store. In this case, it's probably iTunes.
Mm-hmm.
You would assume that it's vetted. You would assume that it's safe. And you know what? They do go through stringent requirements, but you know how many apps there are up there. They can't get every single app vetted 100% that there's no vulnerabilities or any malware or anything else on there. It's just impossible. So there are risks that people take, and many people have innocently downloaded that app. They had some Bitcoins there. They put it in it, and guess what? There is no recourse. And that's another area that kind of stands out to me in my mind with Bitcoin. There's really no built-in consumer protection. And maybe we could think about PayPal.
Yeah.
Same type of thing. That PayPal, when it first came out, nobody knew about it. But once you got used to it, it's very convenient. It's secure. But they also have protection in place in case there's fraudulent sellers and chargebacks and things like that. Bitcoin has no protection like that. It's going to take time before those pieces come into the ecosystem. So you can make a purchase with PayPal, and you have a good certainty that, hey, if something goes awry, you have a recourse. You can do something. What are you going to do if something goes bad with a Bitcoin purchase? I don't know. It's irreversible.
But that's also by design. It was meant to be that no individual country or entity had any kind of supreme control over this. And that's something that's definitely good. And by the way, folks, I normally have a video portion, and I normally just show random websites and things like that. I got to be honest. The Bitcoin chart that we're showing the price of Bitcoin in real time. Scott, I don't know if you and I are doing this, but when we started this interview at about 4, the price of Bitcoin was $17,900. In the past, I'd say about 5 minutes, it dropped down to $16,800. So it dropped $1,000 in the course of 20 minutes. And now it has shot back up another $500 per Bitcoin. It's so volatile, even at this stage. It's hard to, it's easy to see that people are like, oh, I can make $1,000 in a day. Well, you can also lose $1,000 in 20 minutes. It's something that you really need to be careful of. So I think the last part, we're gonna kind of our cautionary tale about Bitcoin. We've seen instances, and I'm sure you know the cities better than I do, or the countries. Thailand, I think, or Taiwan, one of those is coming to mind. And Russia and China, I think, are starting to crack down on it as well. These countries that like having authority over the transactions within their country are very opposed to the idea of Bitcoin, which is, we as a government cannot control what is bought and sold within our borders. So, we've seen Bitcoin banned, we've seen cryptocurrencies banned altogether, and they've made it illegal for, just everyday citizens to own wallets, let alone own and trade Bitcoin. You actually get jail time. What happens if something like that happens in the US? Because we're already seeing, I think it was the FTC already wanted investors to report Bitcoin as a source of investment income, whatever, and the FTC is already trying to regulate Bitcoin. How effective that's going to be, who knows? And hey, they may turn around and say, we can't effectively regulate this, so we're going to make this illegal. It's just not something we want to deal with. What are the chances of that, and what happens if a large country bans Bitcoin?
Well, I do think if any large country that's there's a lot of Bitcoin transactions happening, that if overnight they turn the switch and say, hey, this is banned, this is illegal, if you're caught doing this, you'll be fined or imprisoned, this or that, that would give it a black eye instantly, and I think the price would plummet. Certainly if it happened in the U.S., it would affect the value immediately, because the sheer number of people that are embracing Bitcoin. I think it too may have effect on other cryptocurrencies if that happened, but I don't think it's likely they would solely hone in on Bitcoin only. It probably would affect the entire ecosystem of all cryptocurrencies, would probably take a hit. But like anything else, I think the laws out there of supply and demand and who's going to survive is going to be played out over the next year or so, and you may see that Bitcoin may lose some of its luster, and some of the newer cryptocurrencies that have solved some of the challenges of Bitcoin, such as we talked about, just the sheer time of 8 hours or something like that for a transaction. Those type of things I think are going to work their way through, and then speculators will move on to other stocks or other investments and things like that, or other cryptocurrencies, and I think the winner will probably stand out. But I don't know if it necessarily will be Bitcoin. The sheer fact that its price has skyrocketed and the widespread acceptance has it still, in my opinion, in the lead from the popular vote, from what people feel comfortable using. But all it takes is a big hack. All it takes is a country or two, as you mentioned, that ban it. The tables could turn instantly.
Definitely something to watch out for. And I think, we're definitely coming up on the break, and we're going to start to transition the conversation, still kind of loosely involving Bitcoin. You mentioned NiceHash. That was a service, we did cover that news story when it broke, but you have some news here that we had not covered, which was the role of the CTO, the Chief Technical Officer for NiceHash, and how you say here they recently served prison time for a botnet. So we're going to, I think when we come back, again, we have about 30 seconds. So when we come back, we're going to talk about NiceHash, the CTO, what a botnet is, and why that matters for cryptocurrency, because, again, cryptocurrency is a favorite tool of ransomware, botnets, all that kind of thing. And then we'll transition, I think, over to the Mirai Internet of Things botnet, and we'll talk about that next. But everyone, Scott Schober. He'll continue on with us just after this music means. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with more computer and technology news and this kind of thing with our correspondent, Scott Schober. So, folks, stay tuned. Here we go.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 31 minutes past the hour, and we continue on with the one, the only, the Scott Schober. And folks, by the way, if you want to check out his book or his website or anything that we talk about here today, check out the show notes, and we have a link directly to his website, which I believe is hackedagain.com, which is the name of his book. But yeah, so Scott, we continue on, and like I mentioned before, the CTO of NiceHash, which, as we mentioned before, recently hacked. We assumed by an outside force. It could have very well been, an inside job. Little bit of spy there. But talk about the CTO and talk about the Darkode botnet, and then we'll transition that into the Mirai Internet of Things botnet and why, botnets are only going to get worse, I assume.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I think NiceHash has been certainly in the headlines recently, just the month of December here. And in fact, a colleague, Brian Krebs, I guess, broke the story back in December 6th. They're talking about how $52 million worth of Bitcoins just disappeared from NiceHash, as we were kind of talking about earlier. But some of the interesting things that were reported on, if you look at Darkode and some of the history there, the founder and its CTO actually had a kind of a jaded past. He was really had a cyber crime form, and he really sold all kinds of different things, such as different botnets and how-to and malware strains, a whole bunch of things, until they finally moved in and they actually caught him, and he had to serve some time in jail, and it kind of caught up with him. And then, surprise, he shows up a few years later after he's free and opens up NiceHash, and it's kind of suspicious when suddenly all these Bitcoins mysteriously disappear. The same one that's selling hacking tools and know-how a number of years ago and spends prison time. So he's already got this bad past, this jaded past, and now he surfaces again, and all kinds of problems happen, and Bitcoins miraculously disappear. So obviously the user base and everybody else is pointing to him saying, hey, there's probably crime here. He's probably taken the money and ran, and nobody has any way to easily prove it. So big investigation going on, and a lot of concerned Bitcoin holders saying, hey, what's going on here? Can somebody do something and help us here?
And yeah, as we found out that, these kinds of services, they really can't. There's no one who can say, all right, folks, we're going to revert everyone's wallet back, 20 minutes, and we're going to, reverse all this kind of thing. Like, there's not a backup or, anyone that can flip a switch to make these coins go back to the way they were. It's, a lot of what Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general have been built on has been explicit trust, that you're going to get the services that you paid for, and things like this do happen. So, all right, so he, maybe potentially sold botnet. He did time, and so maybe this currency went away. Let's transition this into the idea of a botnet, because when it comes to what you can do with a botnet, I've heard from a number of sources that the age of the botnet is over, because we have ways of rerouting massive, distributed denial of service attacks. We have ways of rerouting or verifying that traffic before we let it go through. But at the same time, we're seeing such large botnets that they're causing more problems than they ever have before. Talk about the Mirai botnet and talk about, maybe going forward, what can really happen.
Yeah, with the IoT botnet there, it's certainly concerning, and we've seen that story even unfold since back, I guess it was October, about 2016 or so, where there were many, many large tech companies, Netflix and Twitter, Amazon, PayPal, their websites all became blocked because of the botnet, where we had all of these different devices, Internet of Things devices that are connected into the internet, the cameras and other appliances and things, routers, where they could actually house and hold code malware that when they're commanded to, 175,000 of them will suddenly send junk traffic all to a single website server and flood it with garbage. And even more recently in the headlines, there was finally investigated and hunted down, and actually from our area here out of New Jersey, a Rutgers student, a 20 and 21-year-old, one from Pennsylvania, one from New Jersey at Rutgers. They got into some mischief and were creating all of these botnets and this malware, and their background, which I find very interesting, is they were both addicted to Minecraft and playing the game Minecraft, which is an innocent game. My son plays it, and I know many kids that love the game, where you're actually creating things.
Yeah.
And it's kind of different blocks, and you can create different whatever. As creative as your mind can get, you can create cities, animals, all kinds of cool stuff. Anyway, that's their background. So you've got this creative gift and computer knowledge, but it went awry when they started to hack and when they started to play around doing DDoS attacks. And eventually it really caught up with them, because what they were doing was targeting companies with DDoS attacks, and they actually sold services to provide relief, to help fight when you're attacked by a DDoS attack. So they were kind of the bad guy, good guys, which is really terrible, and behind a lot of these giant botnet attacks that are out there. And who knows how many others may have been part of this. And oftentimes that's when malware is picked up and modified for different types of attacks, it's put out there sometimes for free and sometimes sold to other parties. So this is not an isolated attack. This could be in the hands of hundreds of other hackers that could now launch different strands of it and affect who knows how many hundreds of thousands of computers worldwide, have devastating effects.
And the story that you picked up, it's very, very interesting, because like their security firm that they started, supposedly, like it didn't even have to be like good, or they didn't even have to like really know how to defend against these kinds of attacks. If they pointed it at a service and said, hey, we checked your traffic logs, you guys are receiving a lot of horrible, denial of service traffic, pay us, $50,000, and we'll, make sure that traffic won't get to you. All they have to do is turn off their own botnet, and the traffic goes away. No one else, assuming no one else, points their botnet at the same target, then they look like they did a really good job. When really, you're right, that's just some kind of weird level of extortion that they have been found guilty of. That's definitely super interesting. And
scary stuff, that's for sure. And I think it's important for listeners to realize we're all guilty of the world of tying into the internet. We all want to plug into the internet. It's not just our mobile phone, our computers, our HVAC, if it's a Nest thermostat, our security cameras, whatever. So we often can be victim of this, and it's so important when you're setting up and configuring it that we do have proper encryption on there, a good long and strong password so we're not hacked. Don't use the default login credentials that every IoT device has that it comes with, because there's not enough security there. So at least put in the basic security precautions that you're allowed to do to minimize it, and ask questions. Find out how secure is this device, and that's so important. More and more what we're going to start finding is tools, both from the software and hardware perspective, that are going to be monitoring to verify and make sure that these type of DDoS attacks are not actively happening, and we're not going to be victims of it as a consumer or even small businesses.
Now, here's what I want to talk to you about, because yesterday on the program we did a story that's, you can say those things, and I think our audience really should, hear them, really take it to heart, that, you really don't want your devices, because, it's not even like a global good thing about, don't be part of the problem. It's more, you don't want to be concerned with outages, for your devices. You don't want to be concerned with updates to your devices. Just make sure that they are as secure as they can possibly be. But we did a story yesterday, and that's why there was a chicken on our, on our thumbnail, was that there's a service starting in China. Not going to get into why they're doing it, but just suffice to say that they are connecting. They say in 3 years, 24 million chickens to the internet. And they're going to turn the farm animals into Internet of Things devices, where you can monitor your chicken, you can watch your chicken, you can make sure your chicken is getting enough exercise, blah blah blah. Now you say make sure that your webcam isn't going to be it, but like China, that's one huge thing. India is another. America, that's going to be another one. What happens when you have 24 million chickens on this one farm? What happens when you have billions of farm animals across agriculture? What happens when you have tens of billions in the world of connected clothing? Is this something that the consumer can really do? And again, I think they completely should, but how much of this is going to be on the corporate side? Because an individual is never going to touch those 24 million chickens that are going to be on the internet.
Yeah, that's so true. And when you think about things, the scale that some of it goes to, when you mention farm animals, when you talk about clothing that, again, is wearable technology that's tied into the internet, now you're talking mainstream consumers and potentially billions of people and billions of connected devices. That's scary, because when something happens, it affects so many people. And that's where I think the huge concerns are. It's different when it's a focused intranet within your company and something happens or a compromise, but the internet really has the power to connect all of us. And when you add in this many more internet-connected things, billions and billions of devices, the potential for havoc is unbelievable. We probably can't even fathom the danger that can come about when it gets put into a hacker's hands and what they can actually accomplish.
And I think you have the right line of business, because it's your job in your day, in the daytime to, hey, say these are the dangers facing corporate America, or, businesses in the future. They need to know about these, and it may just have to fall upon, the people making these devices to really step up security. So, I think with that, so botnets, they're a thing. They're going to continue to be a thing. Very interesting that even younger and younger people are obviously involved with hacking. Very interesting. Why don't we go ahead and shift the conversation to one of your other topics that you have here, and I want to talk about Uber, because I don't know if I was mentioning it with you. No. It was one of our other correspondents, where Uber has this mystique about it that I don't like. If you hired a company to put out bad publicity on purpose, I don't think they could do a better job than what Uber has done over the past year. And I'm not just talking about hacking, which we're going to talk about. I'm talking in really every regard that a massive company can mess up. They have done so. But this is one where a large number of people have been hacked and compromised. Talk about what happened with Uber and talk about what we know.
Yeah, and with Uber, you could almost state it, because you introduced it so well. What haven't they done? Right?
Wrong,
Everything
right,
they've done
yeah.
is what I call, it's a blunder. It's unbelievable. I mean, they've had multiple sexual harassment of cases that have gone up the corporate ladder, unauthorized user tracking, illegal operations in multiple countries. The list goes on and on.
They don't properly background check their employees. Yeah. It's everything. And then comes out 57 million customer personal information. Just because this is the year that everyone talks about identity theft, they release this and say, well, yeah, this kind of happened as well.
Yeah, It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy, and the sheer number of people that have been actively deleting the Uber app is staggering. And I think they don't even want to talk about it because so many people are running from it because it's really a disaster. They're impersonating drivers, stealing other trade secrets from their competitors and their rivals, falsifying the investigations that the government have forth, and destroying evidence, concealing things. The list goes on and on. And I think the future of Uber, maybe the positive note is they really are investing heavily in the self-driving cars, and I think that's a hot area. It's exciting for Google, it's exciting for Apple, and a lot of others, Tesla, that are all talking about self-driving cars and autonomous cars and how it could make the roads safer, less accidents, and we've talked about it in the past. However, the concern that I immediately have looking at technology and their misuse and mismanagement as a company and then applying it to exciting new technologies, I ask myself, how are they going to botch that? It's scary. You lose faith in a company when they failed on 10 different levels and they continue to do it. That is a huge concern. So I hope that they clean up their act a little bit with new management now in place, but only time will tell.
If I'm not mistaken, Uber was was the company that they poached or headhunted ex-Google self-driving employees, and they found that they were essentially paying outrageous fees for ex-Google employees that would go in, steal Google private documents on self-driving vehicles and then pay them outrageous sums of money and, acquired like a shell corporation, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, they've been found guilty of all this. And it's, it really is kind of atrocious. But, also speaking to, before we even talk about the self-driving car part, let's talk about your personal feelings when it comes to the best response to a breach of security for an individual company, because what Uber did is something that I have yet to hear a cyber professional mention here on the show, which is they paid the ransom for them to cover it up and say, please delete this for XYZ reasons. And yeah, so, talk about why they paid the money and was it the best choice they had?
No, it was a failure across all boards. But when I read this, it really got me discouraged because, Uber does have a legitimate bug bounty program. They launched it back in 2015, and it's really designed for security researchers to find vulnerabilities, to find weaknesses so they could shore up their computer network, so they could shore up the apps and keep consumers and keep drivers safe. Makes sense. And there's a lot of people, security researchers, that have done a lot of hard work and have been rewarded through that bug bounty program. Now, to then just kind of cover up this hack with a quick 100K payout to hackers, it's kind of an insult to all the hard work and legitimate services that these security researchers have put forth. And it almost sets the stage and sets a precedent, in my opinion, for what's the future. You could disguise anything, and you can extort or basically ransom things out of corporations. So how are other large corporations going to respond when a hacker approaches them and tries to extort money or charges a ransom? Well, is the company going to just try to secretly cover it up with a little $100,000 payout and call it a bug bounty, and the shareholders eat it up and life moves on? That would be tragic if that's the way the companies handle these problems.
Right. Yeah, because that more to the security side, it doesn't truly fulfill the purpose of the bug bounty, which is you actually make yourself more secure by offering these rewards. If you just pay out the money to anyone who finds your flaws, that doesn't solve what caused it to happen in the first place. So that is definitely what you don't want to see, but something Uber has obviously tried. And I believe there was legislation after Equifax that was introduced. Don't know how far it actually got. That you have to report any data breaches, any severe data breaches, to the public within a couple of days, if not a couple of weeks. We've seen companies that have hidden it for months, and in Uber's case, I think it was like almost a full year since they were able to release it. At this point, Scott, though, don't you think it's just safer to assume you have been compromised. Your information is out there, and it's just time to kind of assume that you are vulnerable.
Yeah, I think that's unfortunately a safe bet. We all have to be on guard and assume our credit card's been compromised, our social security number, possibly our driver's license, so on and so forth. It's a really sad state to be able to live in a world where we have effective security. We're trying our best to use it, but when large companies cover it up and play games such as Uber did, we're no more secure as a result of it, and that is troubling, and it makes it hard for a consumer, I think, to swallow, and it's hard for all the other companies. Uber's ecosystem is huge, as we talked about autonomous driving, how much investors and stake that affects other Fortune 500 companies working with Uber to make millions and millions of self-driving cars. I don't think a lot of people realize how much is at stake here. Now when you've got this terrible reputation and cover-up and scandal after scandal, it doesn't look like a pretty future to me. It's very, very concerning.
And at this point, I mean, Uber, again, just like Bitcoin, we can't predict the future of any investments. We're not telling you to divest or invest in Uber, but I feel like that, it's kind of like, slowly sipping, poison over a long period of time. Eventually you'll become immune to it. Maybe they're hoping to become immune to bad publicity and they're going to be invincible after all this is said and done. I can only assume. So
yeah,
anyways,
I think you're right there. And I think a lot of us have to we have to make a choice and look at our values. And I think they have such a promising offering. The whole concept is beautiful. I love it. The concept of ride sharing and the way it works and their app and their algorithm, that part of the technology is brilliant. Where they fail is to stand behind it and put their shareholders, their drivers, the customers, and the public being transparent, being honest with them. They have their work ahead of them, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So, all right, so that's Uber, and we're going to go ahead and move on from that one because we only have a handful of minutes here left, and I think we're going to, do a quick, look back on 2017 because, knowing it seemed like, a lot of years that kind of fly by, and you sit here in December and you go, wow, where did the time go? And this year, I mean, talking specifically about hacking, not talking about any other part of our daily lives, I got to say, this year has been, wait, that happened this year? That seemed like ages ago. This year has been chock full. So I'll go ahead and let you, just really quickly highlight some of the big ones, and then what you predict 2018 to look like. Because, ransom. I remember talking in 2016. Next year is going to be the year of ransomware. We were absolutely right. So I feel comfortable about talking about predictions for next year. So this year and then next year.
Absolutely. Well, just a flashback of this year. I think the standouts, I'll call them, because as you mentioned, there's so many. There's literally hundreds of breaches. But Equifax, I think, was a tremendous one. Poorly handled, didn't come forward, a whole bunch of mistakes in the process. But the bottom line, what scares me, is the fact 145 million people had their social security numbers compromised. Their personal information is out there for the taking. Pieces of a puzzle that hackers are holding on to and putting together to perform identity theft. They're using for maybe coupling with other information, for medical fraud. Tax time will be here before we know it. They'll be using some of that information for IRS fraud and other things like that. And the part that really bothers me, they took over 2 months till they actually revealed the hack to the public. Big mistake. They focus more on their bottom line and their profits than the public, that they are holding our data, and we've trusted them without our giving them permission even. That's really sad. And the worst part about it, we still don't know who's behind Equifax's breach.
That's
a
weird
scary.
one. That's weird.
Scary.
It's scary and definitely weird because, usually they come out and they try to extort someone, and at this point they didn't. So there's this one, and then the next one you have here is one that, like, you kind of think, because a lot of people made Yahoo email accounts and they have long since abandoned them. I know that I did, but I know people are creatures of habit. So, when they say that this many people have been hacked, old defunct emails may not matter, but people may still be using these login credentials, and now they're out there in plain text.
Exactly, and your point is well taken. Password reuse is still a huge problem. Almost half the people out there create an account that they say is not that important, a free Yahoo or Gmail account that they need to subscribe or set up something. But the password, the login credentials for your Yahoo account or your Gmail account, if you reuse that somewhere else for your bank or your stock market or what other login credentials there, guess what? They've been compromised. That entire list is part of a master list of passwords that have been compromised that hackers and thieves can have easy access to and try it across many, many sites to see if they could hack in, and it's automated. So change your passwords. Don't trade convenience for security.
Right. And Scott, I hate to do this to you, but I just want to highlight the other two, and then we'll talk about our predictions real quick. But I also want to mention that one of the biggest, it wasn't an active hack, but it just happened about 2 weeks ago, and I'm sure you heard about this, where on the darknet they found a single list with a login, password, email address, name, first name, last name, social security number, 1.4 billion clear text credentials, and it was the largest list ever found on the darknet. So you take lists like that, there are more out there, you give them to a bot and say, here, try 1.4 billion different combinations, and guess what? They'll be able to do it very efficiently. So there's that one, and then the last one you had here, WannaCry, National Health Services, many other companies out there, supposedly potentially done by North Korea, as you have listed here. It wanted cryptocurrency, Bitcoin payments, and hey, it was pretty darn effective. And so we can only assume that we're going to see more of that. Scott, you have 2 minutes. What do you see happening next year? What's the big watch out for businesses, individuals? What happens next year?
Well, I'm really concerned with the growing trend of extortion and ransomware targeted toward critical infrastructure. More and more we're starting to hear about what happens when such as public transportation is targeted. You look at trains, you look at planes, look at the effect, even just power outage at Atlanta, how that affected thousands of flights. What if hackers start targeting this critical infrastructure, be it electric grid, be it transportation, those type of things? That has a huge effect on the United States economy, the bottom line, and affects all of our daily lives. So that's one thing to look forward to, the increasing attacks and again, that ransom that's going to be held out there. Big concern.
Yeah. And it's so weird that you brought up Atlanta, because I didn't want to bring that because there's no evidence. I want to be very clear. So far, it's obviously pretty new, but they did have a power outage. They said it was caused by an electrical fire underground that also affected that thing. But, that's something that we have batted around the office here as well, that critical infrastructure, it's been proven time and time again, it is connected to the internet for monitoring purposes, but it's not exactly secured for, making sure that, intrusion doesn't happen. So I was kind of thinking the same thing about Atlanta. What if that was someone overloading a circuit? What if that was someone, flipping the wrong switches, and it caused that much mayhem?
Yes.
It could certainly be a thing.
Catastrophic. Yep.
So there we go. And Scott, we're just flat out of time. You were absolutely right. We were not going to get to all the topics. But folks, if you wanted to check those out, we have other topics at Computer America in the show notes, as well as everything today. Scott, last word. If people want to find out more, about you, where can they go?
Well, certainly they can go to my company's website, bvsystems.com, to see some of our wireless threat detection tools that we have out there. And then certainly if you want to find out more about myself or my book, you can go to hackedagain.com.
All right, very, very cool. And Scott, so next year, that's right, you're not going to be on next week. So next year, January, looking forward to having you back on. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, all that good stuff. And thanks for coming on.
Thanks again for having me. You have a great one. Take care.
All right, you too. All right, thank you. Bye-bye. All right, everyone. So there he goes. And once again, we have everything right there in the show notes. So tomorrow, folks, if you are paying attention, we will have on the program Derek Shani. He is our graphics correspondent, everything graphics. And I'm looking forward to this because the not so much talked about, but was released I believe it was like the NVIDIA Titan B or something like that. It's a $3,000 graphics card, and we're going to talk about that and more when he comes on the program. So everyone, yeah, check it out tomorrow. Looking forward to it, and thank you for tuning into Computer America. Have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.